Blessings and welcome back, family. We're going to do another encounter video today. But before we begin that, I know that I didn't release anything last weekend, and I don't know about you guys and if you felt it in the air, but I know a lot of us went through it, not the week that just passed, but the week before that. And what I mean by went through it, I mean like ultimate testing and refining, crazy attacks going on, just heaviness in the air. Um, Man, it was really bad. I don't think I've ever had, quite a, cloud come over me before, and I've gone through a lot in my life, really, awful traumatic things, but there's something more when it happens in the spirit and something is trying to punch holes through your spirit to get through your armor. And I went through, something. I it, I have no words, and if Abba leads me to share it, I will eventually. Um, it's it would have to be its separate video. It was definitely something really heavy and not easily talked about. But there was a post that I did, one of the word studies. It was actually on part of the full armor, which was the breastplate that I went over. And this was like over a month ago. And at the very end of that study, I left it with like a little snippet of saying, "Armor up, brethren. Something is coming, and I can feel the tempest in the air, the violent windstorm coming to test our foundations. This may look different for each of us, but the testing, pressing, and refining is coming." In that same post, I stated that Satan was already destroyed. And I strongly believe that this is the case. He's already been destroyed. Jesus said that it is finished, and I believe him. Um, I will go ahead and read this little portion and then get into my encounter series. This is just a small testimony that I want to share. Um, so I believe it's all correlated and connected to one another. And the enemy really hates truth getting out there. So what I said was, what if I told you that Satan was already destroyed? Now the accuser of the brethren lives within people, as people have the duality nature of good and evil within them. Satan left behind a legacy of sorts. He doesn't need to do anything as long as the people continue to propagate false accusations and lies. They work for the enemy regardless if they are aware of this or not. Perpetuating a facade of self righteousness, using it is written and the written word to use against another as a form of correction and control, all the while being a hypocrite and feigning ignorance. Pot meet kettle, mote in the brethren's eye, while the entire forest is in one's own eye. The living word is Jesus, and this should be the focus. None of us are perfect. We are all filthy rags before our Savior. And then after that, I wrote the Armor Up Brethren portion about something coming. And what I know a lot of us went through the last week, I really honestly believe this was just a little taste of more heavy oppression that's going to be coming, which leads me to believe this is why Father had me doing the full armor. And it's like really, really important that we wear it every single day because the enemy will use other people in our lives or people that we don't even know to attack us, and they don't even know that they're being used, right? So sometimes it could be an outside source of someone that you don't even know, and it's just like a domino effect, right? That person knows someone that you know, it affects that person negatively, and then that person reacts and not good in the spirit and then attacks somebody else, and it just like continues until it finally reaches someone that could be like, this is I'm done. We need to stop this. And then pray and call out to Father so that whatever spell was cast with that from the original source can be broken. So with that being said, today's post was actually about Sheol. I am doing a biblical cosmology series with the word studies, and I showed in the post how Sheol has four chambers, just like our hearts have four chambers. And the correlation was brought to me of out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so the different chambers of Sheol is where you have the righteous, the unrighteous, the wicked, and then those that are basically kind of in limbo that it has not been determined where they're going to go, right? Maybe they were believers, maybe they weren't. They did what was right in their own eyes instead of, Father's way. But I mostly want to focus on the righteous and the unrighteous part of the chamber of the heart compared to Sheol, right? So again, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The power of life and death is in the tongue. It is like all connected, right? And if we're speaking evil upon others, especially we tend to take out everything that we're feeling on those closest to us that we love in anger or frustration, and we never stop and think about what we're saying and how can it can affect other people. It's the epitome of, if you don't have anything to nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? um I was taught that growing up because, again, I was bullied a lot when I was younger. Um, and it was just like a big saying back then. So, I mean, it's kind of fitting though. It's so true though, because our words can affect and hurt other people. And that is not walking in the spirit and righteousness of the right heart chamber that Father wants us to walk in. So it's like effectively committing murder in your heart to someone else to speak to them in a way that is uncoming. This is why, or unbecoming, sorry, but this is why, you know, it's so important that we act in love. And I know sometimes love can be tough, which can come across in words that may seem like they're harmful, but it's not meant to be that way. And one thing that I have learned is when we're sharing things with people, it's not about the delivery, even though most people say, you could have said it better. Uh, why did you say it that way? You know, but the thing is, if someone's not ready to hear what is being told to them and what's being delivered to them, it won't matter how it's said. If they're not open to it, they're not ready to hear it, and they're not going to be willing to hear it. You can say it in a very nice sugar-coated way, or you can be blunt like, I usually am. I try to be nice about it, but I'm also like very honest, and I don't have a balance there. It is what it is. Um, so it's not always about the delivery. If the other person is not receptive to getting the information and hearing it, then it won't matter. It won't matter how it's said. It won't matter any of that. So now that I've shared that little story and my lesson that I, have learned throughout my life and here recently, we're going to go ahead and get into my encounter. So this, I need to give like a little backstory on the last encounter that I shared about the monsters under the bed. A lot of this stuff like kind of takes place at this same location, but this was already after um, we moved away from my biological father, where the Bloody Mary incident happened. And so this is here in Arizona, in the same home that the monsters under the bed happened. And so a little bit of the backstory there. I had a brother that died when I was 10 years old. And it seemed like after he passed away, um, a lot of the encounters and crazy, experiences really amped up in that place. I know that a lot of times it's not the place that is haunted. It is the person that has like some type of attachment. And it doesn't matter if you move or not, it's going to follow you. And that's essentially what ended up happening, right? So after my brother passed away, we would have some crazy stuff go on in the house, and hearing footsteps running up and down the hall, and even something as random as the toilet flushing and nobody's in there. Everybody that lived in the house experienced this, saw this, and knew that it was going on. And we would like kind of talk about it a little bit, but then we would, um, again, I grew up in a house that we didn't talk about, we didn't know Bible. It was not taught to us, right? And so we essentially were like, um, it's my brother, right? That's a natural conclusion when you have no idea what's going on in the spiritual world. It's my brother. He's playing pranks. He's running up and down the hall. He's flushing the toilets and doing all of this stuff. Um, they always like to appear as children. You notice that? They really do. It's kind of sick. And I think that's exactly why they do it. Anyway, with all of this stuff going on, the lights turning on and off by themselves, and the toilet flushing, the running up and down the hall. Um, there was a portion of time where we went camping, and this like all ties in together. So just bear with me here. Um, and during that camping trip, things escalated as far as like family stuff went on, because my mom was actually married to my brother's dad at that time, not my father, but a um, different guy. And a lot of bad things happened. And after that, we got home and they ended up going through a divorce. This was after my brother died. And I know that's like really hard on a marriage too, when you lose a child. Uh, so after we get home, other things like start happening. Of course, my mom and my sister and I were packing up because now we have to leave. And this was in the early 90s. So cordless phones were like just kind of barely like a thing. And my mom and I were in the kitchen, packing up the kitchen, getting ready to leave. I think I was probably about like 11 or 12 years old at the time. And I was 11. And so I was packing up the kitchen. My mom was in there with me. And this was like where the telephone and the answering machine was kept and everything. And we already had the phone line turned off. And so there was no like active phone line at the house, because we were moving it into a townhouse. And while we were in the kitchen where all of that stuff was being packed, there was the answering machine that was wrapped up with the cord around it, set on top of the box. We like had it on the top. So when we got it to the other place that we would be able to take it out and plug it in right away and use it. And then also the cordless phone was on top of the box with the cord wrapped around it and everything. And as we were standing there, and it had been unplugged there for a while, it was just sitting there pretty much for probably for almost the entire day, because that this was like in the morning. And then we left the room, did a little bit more packing, and then came back into the kitchen area, and we're getting ready to take the box and put it in the vehicle to leave to take it to the other place. And before my mom and I were standing there conversing about something. I don't remember what we were talking about, but out of nowhere, this phone that's not plugged into anything and its cord is clearly wrapped around it starts ringing. And me and my mom look at each other like, mm, is this happening right now? Is this real? And so we both kind of like ignored it. And the ringing finally stopped, but the answering machine picked up, which is also not plugged in. And there was a recording that was left on it. And there was this crazy voice that came through it, very, very demonic, that was telling us to get out of his house. And then the phone started ringing again. And this time I picked it up, like one does when they're 11 and curious and was wondering what the heck's going on. Like, why is this happening? And so I picked it up. And that same voice came through and was like, get out of my house. And it was like instantaneously fear, and like I wanted to throw up. It was like the most terrifying thing that I had ever heard. And my mom was standing right next to me and heard it. And she took the phone, slammed it down, and we kind of like shoved the box away. We left the room and like never talked about it again until recently. And she remembers the whole thing just like I do. Uh, Man, that was wild. It's like, and imagine how much frequency it took for it to go through something like that and use all of, the energy around them without it being plugged into anything. To me, it's wild. Um, but yeah, we left that house. That was like the last box that we had to take over. And um that's when my insomnia and the worst night terrors and everything really ramped up. So um I'm just saying, man, this world is so much more than we know it is. And again, full armor every single day. Uh and if you see a loved one that's passed, um chances are it's not really them. I don't think Father would be allowing anything like that, except for maybe really rare occasions. And I have another story for another day regarding something like that. And I know what scripture says about talking to the dead and stuff. But I honestly believe Father will allow certain things to happen so that someone can start healing, especially when they've lost a child. Um, that'll probably be next week's story. Um, my mom actually has a whole video of the incident, and I need to find a way to get it on digital so that I can share it. Hopefully, she'll allow me to do that, but we'll see. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this another little testimony that I've had with a crazy encounter, electronics, demonic. Pray over everything. Have a blessed day.